How do companies prove they respect consumer data? This explainer analyzes the key SASB metrics for data privacy, from qualitative disclosures on policies regarding demographic, behavioral, and location data, to the quantitative percentage of custom audience impressions and the total cost of legal losses from privacy incidents.
To see how this works in practice, we're going to follow a logical life cycle of corporate accountability. We'll start with the overall data privacy challenge, dive into Metric 1 on privacy policies, look at Metric 2 regarding targeted advertising, hit Metric 3 on legal penalties, and wrap up with the bottom line on privacy. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. The Data Privacy Challenge. Navigating the Digital Footprint. We live in an era where our digital footprints paint this incredibly detailed, almost unprecedented picture of our daily habits. And this creates a massive challenge for companies, right? They're constantly trying to balance laser-focused targeted marketing with actual data protection.
So enter the definitive tool that investors use to solve this exact transparency problem, the SASB Sustainability Accounting Standard for Advertising and Marketing. Today, we're zeroing right in on the data privacy section. By looking at 3 specific metrics, labeled SV-AD-220a.1, .2, and .3, investors can basically cut through all the corporate marketing fluff. It lets us see exactly how responsibly a company is handling your digital life.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Metric 1, Privacy Policies, Qualitative Disclosures.
This first metric, SV-AD-220a.1, requires companies to clearly lay out the rules they set for themselves when it comes to consumer privacy. But hey, before a company can protect data, they have to define exactly what they're actually collecting. SASB explicitly defines consumer information as anything pertaining to a user's attributes or actions. And here is the absolutely crucial part. This includes data collected from first, second, and third-party sources. So it's not just the stuff you willingly hand over. We're talking about the data they buy from third-party brokers. Brokers who honestly might know more about your morning routine than your own family does.
Let's make this real and break down what this data actually looks like. The standard categorizes it into 4 specific types. First up, demographic data. This identifies a population, things like your age, gender, language, even whether you own or rent your home. Second, behavioral data. Think about that highly specific pair of shoes you were just browsing for yesterday that is now magically following you across every single website you visit. Yeah, that's behavioral data tracking your buying habits. Third, we have location data. Literally the GPS coordinates on your phone constantly pinging and mapping your physical movements. And finally, personal data. This is the identifiable information that can be pieced together like a giant puzzle to lead directly back to you as a specific living person.
So, a company has all this data. What happens now? Well, the SASB standard requires a full disclosure of the entire information lifecycle. They have to explain Step 1, collection, what requires your explicit opt-in consent versus what they're quietly sweeping up in the background. Step 2, use and sharing. Under what exact circumstances do they sell, rent, or distribute your data to third parties? Step 3, retention and security. Basically, how long are they keeping this data and how exactly is it locked down? And Step 4, privacy impact assessments, or PIAs. Companies have to describe how they analyze their own systems to make sure they're legally compliant and actively mitigating privacy risks way before a breach ever happens.
Which brings us to Section 3, Metric 2, Targeted Advertising. This is where we look at the actions.
Here, we're transitioning from those theoretical policies to the actual corporate actions happening in the market, measured by metric SV-AD-220a.2. And notice, we see a shift to the quantitative. This metric forces companies to reveal a hard number, the exact percentage of online advertising impressions targeted to custom audiences. Now, an impression is just a measure of how many times an ad is seen or heard online. A custom audience means that ad was targeted based on all that demographic, behavioral, and location data we just talked about. The math is super simple, but it is incredibly revealing. You just divide custom audience impressions by total overall impressions. For investors, this tells them exactly how heavily a company relies on mining our personal data just to generate revenue.
And listen, companies absolutely cannot hide behind technicalities here. The scope of this metric is impressively comprehensive. It covers impressions from ad campaigns delivered across all online platforms, so we're talking mobile devices and internet-based TV services too. Plus, it includes everyone involved. It's not just campaigns made directly by the entity itself, it also tracks campaigns they've made on behalf of their clients. So whether they're selling inventory on their own networks, buying space on platforms for a customer, or just developing the media plan, if they are using custom audience data, it gets counted, period.
All right, let's look at the fallout in Section 4, Metric 3, legal penalties, the consequences.
This is where we explore the harsh financial reality when things go wrong, when those privacy policies fail, targeted advertising goes a bit too far, and privacy incidents actually occur. Under metric SV-AD-220a.3, companies must disclose the total amount of monetary losses incurred during the reporting period from legal proceedings tied to consumer privacy. We are talking about all monetary liabilities. This right here is where data privacy failures hit the bottom line. Fines, civil judgments, regulatory penalties like restitution, and even criminal penalties brought by governments or individuals.
Now, what's really interesting about this rule is that companies cannot artificially inflate this number by tossing in their own legal defense fees. It strictly tracks the actual penalties and settlements. And they can't just pay a massive fine, sweep it under the rug, and move on. No way. SASB forces them to publicly explain the nature and context of the loss. Like, was it unauthorized monitoring? Was it a violation of children's privacy? Finally, they have to describe the exact corrective actions they're taking. Did they overhaul their management structure? Implement brand new tech? Investors get to see, step by step, exactly how the company is cleaning up its mess.
This reveals the absolute balance sheet reality of data privacy. On one side of the equation, you have the proactive cost of compliance, writing the policies, conducting those privacy impact assessments, and managing consent. On the other side, you have the retroactive financial damage of legal penalties, fines, and let's not forget, the resulting reputational harm. By requiring disclosure on both ends of the spectrum, investors can clearly see which companies are managing their risks properly and which ones are just a ticking time bomb of legal liabilities.
And that brings us to Section 5, the bottom line on privacy, moving forward. As you can see, we've moved rapidly from abstract qualitative privacy policies to the tangible reality of targeted ad data, all the way down to the stark financial risks of legal penalties.
It's a really comprehensive framework that leaves very little room to hide. Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with today. I want you to think about your own digital footprint, the sheer amount of data you generate every single day, and the companies out there mining it. Could the brands you interact with actually survive this level of transparency?